$1 million. Free to play. You just need to survive. It's the Fanatics NFL Survivor Pool. Pick one team to win each week. Get it right, move on. Get it wrong, you're out. The last fans standing take home a guaranteed $1 million cash prize. And for every player who joins, we add $1 to the pot, up to $10 million. The Fanatics NFL Survivor Pool. Play free on the Fanatics app. App access open to all. Must be 21 plus and joined by 9/8 to play. No purchase necessary. U.S. only. Void where prohibited. Subject to complete terms. See fanatics.com/game rules.
Breathe deep. Imagine your legs more limber in Duluth Trading Double Flex Denim. Envision euphorically squatting for that can of suds, bending for your toolbox in a state of bliss, lunging for your laser level on a whole new level. Relax and allow the flex to fill you with ability. Find your inner flex in Double Flex Denim only at Duluth Trading.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Roger Stone Show. Well, I visited with President Donald Trump in the Oval Office this past Thursday. I visited the president specifically to urge him to have a White House celebration to commemorate Columbus Day in October. As you know, the radical left is seeking to erase Christopher Columbus from our history. And while the president indicated that he certainly intends to issue a proclamation and an executive order, he is considering my idea. But I can report to you that the president is alive and well. In fact, he's never looked stronger or more energetic or more determined to implement his agenda to make America great again. I really find it despicable that when the president isn't seen, or seen less, I should say, for a couple of days, the radical left starts this crazy idea that he is dead or that he has serious health problems, when they kept Joe Biden locked up in a room someplace and they didn't question how he was. Jake Tapper now making money on a book saying that Joe Biden was non-compos mentis, but he wasn't saying that at the time. In fact, there was a massive cover-up about Joe Biden's mental and physical frailty. Then I saw former Senator Claire McCaskill from Missouri. If her IQ was 1 point lower, they'd have to water her like a plant. She was unceremoniously dumped by the people of Missouri, but she was on MSNBC saying that the entire Epstein scandal, which we're going to talk about a little later in the show with anti-sex trafficking foe Liz Crokin, is a distraction from our collapsing economy. Our collapsing economy? Inflation remains historically low. The dollar remains strong. Unemployment remains low. And we have a record Dow. They tried this on the Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent, on NBC. Let's listen to the Secretary.
Chris, if things are so bad, why was the GDP 3.3%? Why is the stock market at a new high? Because, with President Trump, we care both about big companies and small companies. And you're quoting big companies, but the big company index, the S&P, is at a new high.
Hasbro says they're going to have to increase their prices. Goldman Sachs says 86% of the tariff revenue collected so far has been paid by American businesses and consumers. So just bottom line, Mr. Secretary, do you acknowledge that these tariffs are a tax on American consumers?
No, I don't.
Even though you have companies saying they are going to have to increase prices, and given the fact that 86% of these tariffs so far have been paid by Americans.
You're quoting Goldman Sachs. So
yes, Goldman Sachs, correct.
I made
Which I said, yeah.
I made a good career trading against Goldman Sachs.
Okay.
Scott Bessent, one of the president's very best appointees, Secretary of the Treasury. Meanwhile, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Is under attack by Big Pharma. Virtually every Senate Democrat has now demanded his resignation. Why? Well, because he is questioning the the vice grip control of Big Pharma on all of our federal health institutions. Among other things, he has gotten the food companies to start eliminating dangerous dyes and additives from our food. He's done away with the mandatory nature of the COVID-19 vaccination for infants and for children. Not even in the UK, not even Europe do they require this. Here is RFK on the COVID-19 vaccination.
COVID-19 was politicized?
Yeah, the whole process was politicized. Senator, I mean, we were lied to about everything. We were lied to about natural immunity. We were lied to about, we were told again and again the vaccines would prevent transmission, they'd prevent infection. It wasn't true. They knew it from the start it wasn't true because that's what the animal studies and the clinical trials showed. We were told that there was science behind cloth masks. The CDC allowed the teachers union to write the order closing our schools, which hurt working people all over the country, and then pretend it was science-based. All of these issues, and then I can show you, like, for example, Chairman Wyden was talking about me politicizing ACIP, but during COVID, probably the most famous scientist on ACIP was Martin Kulldorff from Harvard, the great, world-renowned epidemiologist and vaccinologist. And he criticized the COVID booster mandates. They ejected him from COVID because he wasn't in the orthodoxy. The two biggest health officials at FDA during COVID, Dr. Gruber and Dr. Krause, criticized the Biden mandates, vaccine mandates. President Biden said in August, I would never take that vaccine, the Trump vaccine. And he came in, he mandated it, and then he fired the two top health officials at FDA who said, hey, this thing has not been properly tested. So the whole process was politicized, and even today.
I'm 15.
Congressman Frank Pallone of New Jersey decided to tangle with RFK in a hearing as well. Let's listen to that exchange.
Think of all the establishment attacks on RFK Jr.?
Well, he's a different kind of a guy. He's got a lot of good ideas, but he's got a lot of ideas. Normally they don't have any ideas, and that's why we have problems with autism and so many other things, because we're coming up with the answers for autism. You watch. We're coming up with the answers for other things that normal people, regular people,
that was President Donald Trump indicating that he is standing by RFK under this withering attack. Why are these Democrats attacking RFK? I think the answer is very clear. Bernie Sanders, the blowhard senator from Vermont, has taken $1,953,000 in campaign contributions from Big Pharma. Senator Elizabeth Warren, also known as Pocahontas, that's fake Indian, she's taken $1.2 million in campaign contributions. Senator Chuck Schumer, $1.5 million from the Big Pharma lobbyist. Ron Wyden. I'm no Matt Nail, but this guy's really weird looking. Overall, $1.2 million in campaign contributions from Big Pharma. If you go and look at the larger long-term totals from 1990 to 2024, $23 million to Bernie Sanders, $14 million to Raphael Warnock of Georgia, $10,477,000 to Elizabeth Warren, $6,780,000 to Ron Wyden, $5,888,000 to Tammy Baldwin, and on and on and on. These people have a conflict of interest. They are paid for by Big Pharma. So Robert F. Kennedy is doing the people's work here. He has, as I say, ended the mandate for those children and infants, taken dye and other toxic materials out of our food. It's amazing to me when you buy a box of, say, Cheerios, here in the United States, it has additives that we know to be toxic over time. Yet if you buy that same box of Cheerios in Europe, they don't include those additives. So I think RFK deserves the support of every American. The long knives are out for him, but he stands tall. What impresses me about him, and I've watched politics for a long time, is I've never seen him in any hearing or in any forum or in any interview where he cannot back up what he says with scientific studies and absolute documentation of his claims. He is fighting to make America healthy again. He is fighting the vice grip of the big pharmaceutical companies. Among the most important fights he's engaged in is the fight to end the advertising on our cable, on our radio, on our television by big drug companies. That colors their coverage of those issues. So the fake news buys into this whole idea that the COVID-19 vaccination is completely safe and effective when the statistics prove otherwise. And very soon, as the president just said, we'll get to the bottom of the shocking rise in autism in America. Again, it is not, in my opinion, that RFK is opposed to vaccinations. What he's opposed to is the additives in vaccinations, such as mercury and other substances. This is a very, very important fight. The success of the Trump presidency depends not only on economic prosperity, not only on law and order and safe communities and the fight against crime, not only on closing the border and deporting dangerous illegals, but also on the efforts to make America healthy again. This is an important part of the president's political coalition, the so-called mama bears out there, who aren't Republicans, who aren't conservatives, but who are ready to make America healthy again. You're tuned into the Roger Stone Show right here on the Red Apple Audio Networks. Coming up on the show, Liz Crokin, who is a award-winning author, independent investigative journalist, and documentary filmmaker, best known for her relentless work against sex trafficking. She knows more about the Epstein case perhaps than anyone in the country. Maybe I would be second to her only because I investigated it and wrote about it very extensively for my book, The Clintons' War on Women, published in 2015. There's an awful lot of disinformation out there about the Epstein case. And the Democrats who are jumping up and down saying that Donald Trump is effectuating a cover-up are going to be very, very sorry. I favor full disclosure. So does Donald Trump. The Justice Department last week gave to the U.S. House of Representatives thousands of documents. We moved in court. The Republicans moved in court to release the grand jury testimony, and it is Democrat judges in Florida and New York who blocked that from happening. You're listening to The Roger Stone Show, and we'll be right back.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Roger Stone Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Roger Stone Show. Brian Pugh, the mayor of Croton-on-Hudson, New York, ordered a disabled Vietnam veteran to take down his Trump is my president flag. The veteran, Leonard Amicola, was targeted on the community's content-neutral code, which is an obvious violation of his constitutionally protected right to free speech. Amicola has had the pro-Trump banner up intermittently from 2021 and had previously been threatened with his flag being stolen and defaced, as well as angry Democrats throwing rocks at his home and threatening his well-being because the sign triggered them before Mayor Pugh finally came in with his illegal edict forcing the veteran to take the sign down. This is very similar to what happened to my good friend Anthony Constantino, the chief executive order of Sticker Mule. He put up the largest Trump sign in the world in the city of Amsterdam in the lead up to the 2024 election. Now, Constantino won a legal battle to ensure that his First Amendment rights were protected, but perhaps this Vietnam veteran doesn't have the means personally to challenge this mayor's tyrannical actions in court. See, this is how petty tyrants use their authority to take away free speech rights from the people. All the more reason why liberals need to be rooted out of every position, from the federal government down to the smallest municipalities, for our liberty to flourish. This must be done at the ballot box. In the meantime, I'm going to bring the case of Mr. Amicola to Anthony Constantino to see if we can get a little legal assistance here. This shall not stand. Meanwhile, a horrifying video has gone viral of a man brutally stabbing an innocent woman to death in Charlotte, North Carolina last month. DeClaros Brown Jr., 34, a homeless serial felon, was arrested and charged with first-degree murder after he stabbed a 22-year-old Yerba Zarutka in the neck 3 times before calmly walking away and leaving her lifeless corpse on the floor of a subway car. Brown's rap sheet includes robbery with a dangerous weapon, larceny, and communicating threats. In this case, the perpetrator of the crime happened to be a black man, while the woman is a white man. If this were a white man targeting a black man with a stabbing, there would be wall-to-wall media coverage, riots, and widespread demands for justice. Remember the outcry after Jussie Smollett's obviously bogus story about MAGA-related terrorists attacking him and a couple of his friends? That was completely faked. This proves that in the age of Black Lives Matter, white lives evidently do not matter. This should have us all re-questioning the national religion of multiculturalism as evidence continues to pile up, showing us that diversity is not, in fact, our strength and might actually be a weakness. We pray for the families of this poor woman, brutally murdered without reason, without cause, seemingly randomly, and we pray for justice in this case. Meanwhile, the Trump administration has found 22,638 unaccompanied migrant children who are just completely lost by the Biden administration. The administration has released startling information, shows that this staggering 22,000 unaccompanied migrant children across the border disappeared while Biden was in office, with at least 27 of those children now being confirmed dead. Under Donald Trump, we are sealing the border and we're ending this horrific scene. We'll be right back, right here on The Roger Stone Show. Whatever you do, don't touch that dial.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Roger Stone Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Roger Stone Show. Joining me now is Liz Crokin. Liz Crokin is an award-winning author, an independent investigative journalist, and a documentary film producer, best known for her relentless work exposing sex trafficking. Liz executive produced Slave Princess, released in the fall of 2021. That documentary film covered Britney Spears' illicit conservatorship and the systematic corruption surrounding media, Hollywood, and the government in that controversy. But in the spring of 2020, she appeared in the viral documentary Out of Shadows, which has now been viewed by over 100 million people globally and translated into over 24 languages. Now, they did everything humanly possible to censor this film, to remove it from the internet. It is a film you must see, Out of the Shadows. But I invited Liz here today because I saw her post last night on social media where she said, President Trump is calling out the Democrats who did nothing to stop Jeffrey Epstein. Instead, they befriended him, they took money from him, they socialized with him, and they went to his pedophile island. Now the Democrats are launching their Epstein hoax with the chief snake, Hillary Clinton operative Gloria Allred at the helm, attempting to disparage Trump by falsely labeling him as an accomplice of Epstein and falsely accusing him of being a pedophile. I covered this topic myself very extensively in my 2015 book, The Clintons' War on Women. I'm aware of the fact that Donald Trump first cut Jeffrey Epstein off actually in late 2004, before he was exposed as a sex criminal in Florida, before he was charged with sex crimes in Florida. And that, if the Democrats are successful in getting full disclosure of Epstein's list of guests to his orgy island, he's going to find mostly Democrats. President Bill Clinton, Treasury Secretary Larry Summers, U.S. Senator George Mitchell, the one-time Senate Majority Leader, Governor Bill Richardson, and others. Liz, welcome to the Roger Stone Show.
Hi, Roger. Happy Sunday. Thank you so much for having me on to expose this Jeffrey Epstein Democrat hoax, which is ridiculous, and they are just spewing so many lies about President Trump, and it makes my blood boil because they're using victims to attack President Trump. And yes, not only is Gloria Allred, who is a known Hillary Clinton operative, who has been working with Hillary Clinton, which was proven, by the way, in emails that were released by WikiLeaks years ago. She's been a proven Hillary Clinton operative who has been working against President Trump going back to at least 2016. Now, Gloria Allred has also represented many women who have made false sexual assault claims against President Trump. In addition to that, allegedly and reportedly, these women were paid to lie and slander President Trump. Furthermore, I will add that her snake lawyer, or so-called lawyer, daughter, Lisa Bloom, also paid women to make false allegations against President Trump. This is going back years, and this has been reported even in the mainstream media.
Yeah, it is the greatest single hoax. It's interesting that when you see the comments on social media, there's a concerted effort here to tie Donald Trump into something that he had nothing whatsoever to do with. I mean, we actually know the sequence of events here. Donald Trump cut Epstein off, as I say, in 2004, after he made an indecent approach to Virginia Roberts Giuffre, who was then working at the spa at Mar-a-Lago. Now, I interviewed Virginia Roberts Giuffre for 6 hours in 2 3-hour sessions. I also read every word of her sworn testimony. She was one of the victims who refused to settle for a multi-million-dollar payment and insisted in pursuing her lawsuit against Jeffrey Epstein. Now they tell us several months ago that suddenly she committed suicide. Having spent time with her, having read her testimony, understanding her resolve, frankly, I doubt that very, very much. But most interestingly, even though Ghislaine Maxwell was quoted the other day saying that Bill Clinton never visited Epstein's island, if you read the sworn testimony of Virginia Roberts Giuffre, she was present while Bill Clinton was there, and Jeffrey Epstein flew in 2 16-year-old girls specifically for President Bill Clinton's amusement.
Yes, and I will also add there's tons of public record, and even the mainstream media has acknowledged that Bill Clinton has been to Jeffrey Epstein's pedophile island over 24 times. And I also will add that Eric Prince said in 2016 that Hillary Clinton went to Jeffrey Epstein's pedophile island as well, which should not be shocking because Bill and Hillary Clinton not only have been very close friends with Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell for many, many years, Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell also were associates of them who helped them launch the Clinton Global Initiative and the Clinton Foundation. And I will add that the Clinton Foundation is a front for child sex trafficking. And this has been proven. And this has been proven through evidence that has been discovered on Anthony Weiner's laptop going back to 2016. And that has also been validated and confirmed in the Inspector General's report that I believe came out in either 2018 or 2019. And in that Inspector General report, it read that the evidence that was found on Hillary Clinton's laptop proved that Hillary Clinton, her associates, and the Clinton Foundation were involved in crimes against children, including sex crimes against children. And we've had a lot of more revelations and documents that have come out to back this up recently.
Well, as you know, photographs prove that Ghislaine Maxwell was an honored guest when Chelsea Clinton married her husband, Mark Mezvinsky, who was the son of a disgraced Pennsylvania member of Congress. We also know that Maxwell headed the Tara Mar Foundation, which on paper was a pro-environmental nonprofit, but in fact was a grooming pool collecting young interns to be sexually exploited by Jeffrey Epstein. This entire story starts in the Sunshine State of Florida after a tip to the Palm Beach Police Department. Police Chief Michael Ryder conducts a 6-month undercover investigation of Jeffrey Epstein, and he turns over to the Palm Beach State's attorney an airtight case involving 33 underage girls, a case in which Epstein could have been charged with child sex trafficking. He also hands over a case in which Epstein could have been charged with statutory rape of at least 28 underage girls. The police chief is shocked when, after Epstein hires Alan Dershowitz, Gerald Lefcourt, Roy Black, and Ken Starr, three of the most prominent legal defense attorneys in the country, and Ken Starr, who'd been the special counsel in the Whitewater matter, a Republican, but he is shocked when they actually charge Epstein with 1 count of solicitation, which is like walking into a bar and trying to pick up a hooker. Hardly the seriousness of child sex trafficking. Only after the police chief complains does the state prosecutor bump that charge up to 1 count of soliciting of a minor. Between the time that Epstein is charged and the time he pleads, the Clintons take a $25,000 contribution from him for the Clinton Foundation. Chuck Schumer's also taken enormous thousands of dollars in campaign contributions from Epstein. So it is only then that the feds get this case, and for reasons that need to be explained and hopefully will be very soon before the House committee investigating this, the Attorney General of the United States, Alberto Gonzales, orders the U.S. Attorney in Miami, Alexander Acosta, to rubber stamp the state charges and seal the case, saying we don't want a political circus. I cover this very extensively in my book. Acosta, Gonzales, all of these people need to be subpoenaed to testify before the Congress.
Yes, and they have been, and we will be hearing from Alex Acosta, assuming he shows up later this month. So I would encourage people to watch that and pay very close attention to that. But I want to add, you mentioned the Clintons' close relationship with Ghislaine Maxwell, and you know how Ghislaine Maxwell was close friends with Chelsea Clinton. She was photographed at Chelsea Clinton's wedding. Well, an interesting fact here, Bradley Edwards, who is one of the attorneys who represented several Jeffrey Epstein victims, who, by the way, has said repeatedly and also put in his book that out of every single person that he contacted in Jeffrey Epstein's black book to see if they would help him with his case and his investigation into Jeffrey Epstein, there was only one person that helped him, and that man was Donald Trump. But going back to the Clintons and Ghislaine Maxwell, Bradley Edwards was trying to serve Ghislaine Maxwell for a deposition years ago. And, Ghislaine or her lawyers claimed that she was out of the country. And it turns out she wasn't out of the country. She was lying, of course. And the only way they were able to track her down and find her is because they knew she would be at a Clinton Global Initiative event. And that is where she got served. And I will also add that in addition to Bill and Hillary Clinton repeatedly going to Jeffrey Epstein's pedophile island, they also routinely every year regularly would also take vacations at his New Mexico Zorro Ranch, another place where Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell abused women and children and did all other kinds of nefarious things at that compound.
If you're just tuning in, we're talking to documentary filmmaker and investigative journalist Liz Crokin, and we'll be right back.
Now, it's time for Protecting Your Future, sponsored by Colonial Metals Group. Here's Roger Stone.
In these turbulent economic times, with the Federal Reserve stoutly refusing to cut interest rates on the American people, even though the unemployment rate and the inflation rate are either lower than or at the same level that they were the last 4 times the Fed cut rates, and continuing to print money like it's going out of style, with the Congress refusing to codify and make cuts in the billions of dollars, the trillions of dollars of waste identified by Elon Musk and Doge. Now is for the time for you to protect your future. Now is the time for you to protect your retirement, and you can do it with the strength of gold. Gold has always stood the test of times. You can convert all or part of your cash savings, your IRA or your 401k to gold, and you can do it tax-free. The people I trust to do this are the people at the Colonial Metals Group. Go to colonialmetalsgroup.com/stone. That's colonialmetalsgroup.com/stone, or go to freegoldguide.com and learn all about it. You'll be glad you did.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Roger Stone Show. We're talking to documentary filmmaker and investigative reporter Liz Crokin, one of the leading voices in the country against sex trafficking. Liz, I want to ask you about the P. Diddy case in Manhattan, because it seems to me that in the case of Jeffrey Epstein, by the way, it was the Trump administration that charged Jeffrey Epstein with 1 count of child sex trafficking and 1 count of conspiracy to engage in child sex trafficking. It was the Trump administration that charged Ghislaine Maxwell with child sex trafficking. And it was the Trump administration that ultimately tried P. Diddy. But all of these cases seems to me to have been affected by former U.S. Attorney Damian Williams. And it looked to me in the Diddy case like the government went out of their way to lose that case. What do you think?
Well, let me just start with one more thing I want to say in terms of President Trump in relation to Jeffrey Epstein. President Trump has been calling Jeffrey Epstein a hoax, but he's saying it's a Democrat hoax. He's saying it is a con job like Russiagate. Now, what President Trump means by this is that the Democrats are running this operation, this clown show, this PSYOP right now, where they are trying to falsely pin Jeffrey Epstein on President Trump. They are trying to imply that President Trump was one of his accomplices, and some people are going as far as accusing falsely President Trump for being a pedophile. Now, let me tell your audience something. President Trump has been working to take down Jeffrey Epstein and his ring for several years, long before he even ran for president, long before he even became president. We had Speaker Mike Johnson come out and say the other day that President Trump worked as an FBI informant to take out Jeffrey Epstein and his ring, in addition to the work that he did to help Jeffrey Epstein's victim's lawyer, Bradley Edwards, which I mentioned earlier. He also kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago, which you mentioned that as well. And so FBI informant, he worked with Bradley Edwards, was the only one in Jeffrey Epstein's, entire black book that worked with Bradley Edwards. The only reason that Jeffrey Epstein's ring was beginning to be taken down was because of President Trump. During President Trump's first term, it was his DOJ that took down Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. It was his Attorney General, Jeffrey Sessions, who started the investigation into Jeffrey Epstein. And I've been saying before President Trump even became president in 2016 that I firmly believe that one of the main reasons why President Trump ran for president was to take down Jeffrey Epstein and all of his elite pedophile pals and to combat child sex trafficking. And that was proven during his first term, because during his first term, he did more than any president to combat child sex trafficking. And he addressed this in the White House within weeks of him being sworn in 2017. Now, during his second term, he is continuing to break up all of these rings, and he will continue to take down Jeffrey Epstein's ring as well. Now, in terms of Diddy, I'm happy that he was at least found guilty on some counts. I'm disappointed that he wasn't found guilty on more counts. I'm also disappointed that there has not been any other co-conspirators from Diddy's ring that have been arrested yet. However, my sources have told me that we should expect people from Diddy's ring to get arrested, and also that we should expect that there will be more charges filed against Diddy.
All right, there we have it. The inimitable Liz Crokin, and she brings the heat. She's absolutely right. When President Trump says this is a hoax, he doesn't mean that Epstein wasn't a child sex trafficker. It was his DOJ that charged him with that crime. The hoax is that he has any personal involvement in it. It is a smear, a vicious smear. Liz Crokin knows it. I know it, and I'm delighted she could join us today to say it for you.
Absolutely, and I'll add one more thing real quickly. At press conference.
Sorry, we lost her there. God bless you, Liz. Thanks for joining us. We'll be right back.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Roger Stone Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Roger Stone Show. Joining me now is Rod D. Martin. He is the founder and chief executive officer of Martin Capital. He's an entrepreneur, but his most impressive accomplishment, in my view, is a very, very lively Substack that he turns out. I don't subscribe to many other folks on Substack. I frankly don't have time, but the Rod Martin Report, which you can get by going to rodmartin.org, that's rodmartin.org, is literally indispensable reading. Some of the best commentary and analysis you will find any place on the internet. We're always very lucky to have him. Rod, welcome, and thanks for joining us today on the Roger Stone Show.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Rod, you've got so much great stuff up, I almost don't know where to start, but let's start here. You point out that when President Eisenhower mobilized the National Guard to preserve order, he was hailed as a hero. This, of course, was in Little Rock, Arkansas, when he used the National Guard to enforce the desegregation of the public schools. But now the Democrats and the radical left, well, wait a minute, that's kind of the same thing, seem to be going out of their mind because the president not only used the National Guard to restore safety in the District of Columbia, but he is threatening to do so in the city of Chicago as well as in the city of Portland. Later on in the show, we have former Chicago Police Superintendent Richard Bresack joining us. He's a strong supporter of this idea, but tell us your thinking on this issue.
Well, you nailed it. It's complete hypocrisy, but it isn't surprising because, honestly, remember who it was who opposed Eisenhower? It was the Democrats. That was exactly the point. The Democrat governor, Orville Faubus, whom I had the pleasure of spending some time with before he died, really, really fascinating man. But he was a segregationist, and he called out the National Guard to block the entry of Little Rock Central High by 9 black students. And Eisenhower's response to that, remember, this is only 3 years after Brown versus Board of Education, Eisenhower's Republican response to that was to call out the 101st Airborne, federalize the Guard, and occupy Little Rock for 8 months. I'm really not kidding. And I know because we glorified this beyond all measure. I grew up in Arkansas. We were regaled with tales of the Little Rock Nine every year of my schooling. So this is heroic. This is amazing until Donald Trump does it. And honestly, that is how that works because it's not like Eisenhower's the only one. JFK called out the Guard. LBJ called out the Guard. Nixon called out the Guard. Bush called out the Guard for the riots in Los Angeles. Countless presidents have done this, and there are rules you got to follow. There are absolutely legal limits, and you see that in D.C. The president hasn't allowed the National Guard to make any arrests. They're allowed to detain people until the police come and make a determination as to whether there should or shouldn't be an arrest. But their presence makes a world of difference. And the truth is, if we had done this in 2020 during the BLM riots, those riots would have been quelled. And the president, I think, learned his lesson from that, learned who to listen to and who not to, and I think he's doing the right thing.
I could not agree more. I thought that the BLM Antifa riots, the final year of his presidency, was a test. Somebody persuaded him to leave the decision to the governors. It's a mistake that he will not make again, has not made again. He has indicated pretty clearly that it's not a matter of if he goes into Chicago with the National Guard, but a matter of when. What's really amazing to me is the way Democrats, like J.B. Pritzker, like the mayor of Chicago, are these people actually pro-crime? Are they pro-violence? I don't understand what constituency they think opposes the idea of safe neighborhoods and communities.
Well, the socialists among us absolutely are pro-criminal, as they have been in every country where socialists have taken power. And you see it right now in Great Britain. The government is going out of its way to shield all of these Pakistani rape gangs from any consequences whatsoever. But if you're a mom who posts a meme about it online, you go to jail. And we actually have 30 such arrests a day in Great Britain, supposedly the second freest country in the world right now. So, yes, the left, the true left, the socialist left, always does take the part of criminals, whether it's flooding the border with 10 million new illegal aliens in just 4 years, whether it's going to bat for Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who is a wife-beating, human-trafficking gangbanger, and they want him in Maryland really bad, or whatever it is, because the issue is never the issue. The issue is always the revolution, and they know that if they can bring about enough chaos, first of all, it helps their intersectional minority groups to have more political power. It also breaks down orders such that when they want to crack down and have a truly top-down order, people will clamor for it. Or at least that's the strategy. And that has worked in countless countries that fell under the yoke of communism. So that's where we are. Now, are all Democrats like that? I am certainly not saying that. But some of the leaders of the Democratic Party today could not be clearer that they are socialists, that they want to fundamentally transform America, and that the U.S. Constitution is not only obsolete, it's racist and evil.
Folks, if you're just tuning in, we're talking to Rod Martin of the Rod Martin Report. You can go to rodmartin.org. Strongly recommend that you do so and subscribe. There you will find some of the best political analysis and commentary online today. Rod, you have a great piece regarding the Fifth Circuit decision, or the Fifth Federal Circuit blocked President Trump's use of the Alien Enemies Act in order to deport illegal, dangerous, illegal immigrants. You wrote, among other things, that this decision is wrong on the facts and wrong on the law. Tell us what you meant.
Well, that's absolutely right. And I think, I suspect that the three-judge panel, which, by the way, ruled against the president 2-1, so it wasn't even unanimous. My guess is the three-judge panel will be overturned when there's an en banc hearing of the full Fifth Circuit, because it just doesn't make sense. This is a statute that has been on the books since 1798. We know exactly what it means. We know exactly how it's applied, and it's been upheld by the courts for 2 centuries. So, what has the president done? Well, he's made the required statutory finding that Tren de Oruga, a narco-terrorist thug gang from Venezuela, is in fact a paramilitary organization of the Venezuelan government, that they are trained, funded, and directed by the Maduro regime, and that about 300 of them were infiltrated across the border during the Biden years to wreak havoc in American cities. This is a guerrilla operation, not that much different, although much smaller in scale, than the Viet Cong. And the president has every right to make that determination. That has been the consistent interpretation of the courts all through the years, that as long as the president makes that determination in good faith, it is part of the executive authority, and therefore Article 2, the executive branch, the president, it is his right to actually make the determination and act on it. It's all bound by law. There are parameters on that. There are boundaries on all of it. It's not in any way exceeding presidential authority. It is, in fact, utilizing the presidential authority that has been exercised by presidents for over 2 centuries. So, yeah, the court erred on the facts. They found that this wasn't really a paramilitary organization being directed by the Venezuelan government. Well, hogwash. The court doesn't have access to the information needed to make that determination. More to the point, Article 3 doesn't give them the authority to second-guess the president on it. And on the law, they simply misapplied it. So I think the president prevails on this. If he has to go to the Supreme Court, I think he prevails 7-2.
Once again, though, we see this pattern of judicial tyranny. Federal courts recently ruling the president doesn't have the authority to negotiate new tariff deals with our trading partners. The federal judge Gia Cobb arguing the president doesn't have the authority to deport dangerous illegals because they haven't gotten sufficient due process. It's like one big stalling action.
It is. Well, and deliberately so. They know he's term limited. They know he only has 4 years. They know that normally a president really only has his first 18 months, and they're just running out the clock. That's absolutely their strategy, and they couldn't be plainer about it. You can read about it in The Atlantic. They wrote a whole article this last week about, yes, we are absolutely carrying out lawfare to stop the Trump agenda. Well, okay, there you go. And I don't blame them. I mean, good for them. That's one way to go at it. But it doesn't respect the outcome of an election we just had that gave the president an overwhelming majority of the popular vote and the electoral vote. Elections have to matter. The president ought to be able to get his people through the Senate confirmed in time to actually run an administration before the new one comes in, and he ought to be able to conduct his policies. And we determine whether we like that or not every couple years at an election. And the Democrats don't want that. They want to be able to block and stop and slow down and overturn every single thing that isn't what they would choose. And that's not democracy. When they say they're defending our democracy, what they mean is they're defending rule by Democrats.
Yeah, the people who nominated a candidate for president that not a single Democrat primary or caucus voter voted for, in a contest in which no other candidate was allowed to compete. The people who want to limit free speech on the internet and censor any idea they don't agree with, they say that we're the danger to democracy. I would argue that they are the danger to democracy. We'll be right back with Rod Martin, and when we do, I want to ask him about whether it is possible for Alberta, the province in Canada, as well as Saskatchewan, to potentially become the next two states of the United States. We'll be right back.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Roger Stone Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Roger Stone Show. We're talking to Rod Martin of the Rod Martin Report. I strongly urge you to go to his Substack. You can get that at rodmartin.org. Some of the most lively and incisive political commentary and economic commentary on the internet today. I strongly urge you to subscribe. It is indispensable reading. Rod, I really was not focused on this issue. I remember laughing along with the rest of the country when President Trump joked that maybe Canada should become our 51st state, and if Justin Trudeau was really nice to him, maybe let him be governor. Of course, Trudeau is now long gone, and a reading of the Constitution and a piece that you wrote back in May that I read way back then, but you've republished, indicates that there's a very real possibility that Alberta, one of the most conservative, also the wealthiest in terms of natural resources and so on, provinces in Canada, could secede from Canada, could become independent, and then could theoretically apply for statehood with the United States. I'm actually in touch with a group in Saskatchewan, which is a smaller but no less conservative, perhaps even more conservative province. Also, one of the number 2 producers of uranium in the world, the number 1 producer of potash in the world, also a leading source of rare earth elements. I think there's a substantial public interest in potentially seceding to independence in Saskatchewan as well. So tell us about this.
Well, you're right to mention Saskatchewan. They're fantastic and, great people, just like in Alberta. Alberta is the Texas of the North. In resources, in just general attitude. And they are just being treated abominably by the Laurentian elite back east. They are being treated not as a province of a federal republic like the United States. They're being treated like a colony of an empire in Ottawa. They are being just raped and pillaged financially to pay for the welfare schemes in the recipient provinces such as Quebec and the Maritimes, and they're not getting anything in return for it except a war on their energy product. So it's just really a terrible situation. Danielle Smith is the premier. She's doing a fantastic job. They've reduced the signature requirement for an initiative to vote on separation. And they almost immediately got all the signatures they needed. So she's got a strong hand to negotiate with Ottawa. And if it goes badly, there's a very real possibility, and Conrad Black was talking about this just the other day, that Alberta might very well become the 51st state, and I would be thrilled if they did. I might move there myself.
All right. Saskatchewan may be just ahead of them or right behind them. There's a fledgling movement there to do the exact same thing. This would be real democracy in action, and I've read the law very carefully. This is subject to a vote by the people. So it can very definitely be a reality. You pointed out in your great piece. Again, I want to thank our guest, Rod D. Martin of the Rod Martin Report. You can go to rodmartin.org for his analysis. He turns out great stuff, and we're always honored to have him here on The Roger Stone Show. Rod, God bless you, and I hope the rest of your weekend is fine.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Roger Stone Show. Joining me now is Richard Brezak. He is the former superintendent of the Chicago Police Department, serving in that position from 1980 to 1983. Richard Brezak joined the Chicago Police Department in 1964, joining as a simple patrol officer, rising through the ranks to become the superintendent of police, one of the most respected law enforcement professionals in the country today. And he joins us to talk about the horrific situation in Chicago. Over the past Labor Day, you had 52 people shot, 8 people killed, 4 mass shootings. Yet Governor J.B. Pritzker and Mayor Brandon Johnson insists that crime is actually under control and dropping. There's no evidence that is the case. President Donald Trump has clearly already made the decision to send in the National Guard to ensure the safety of the people of Chicago. Let's listen to the president.
Make your mind up on Chicago, though?
Well, we're going in. I didn't say when. We're going in. When you lose, look, I have an obligation. This isn't a political thing. I have an obligation. When we lose, when 20 people are killed over the last 2.5 weeks and 75 are shot with bullets. So let me tell you a little story about a place called D.C., District of Columbia, right here where we are. It's now a safe zone. We have no crime. It's in such great shape. You can go and actually walk with your children, your wife, your husband. You can walk right down the middle of the street. You're not going to be shot, Peter. You're safe.
That is the president. Sounds to me like he's made up his mind. And before we go to Richard Brezak, the former superintendent of police, let's listen to Mayor Brandon Johnson and his reaction.
Are you prepared to defend this land that was built by slaves, a land that was built by indigenous people, a land that is built by workers? Are you prepared to defend this land? The people united will always prevail. I need you all to stand firm, to stand strong. If this president decides to continue to break this Constitution.
This is unbelievable. President Trump's clearly getting ready to send the National Guard to Chicago to keep order and for the safety of the people. Another former police superintendent, Gary McCarthy, says this is a bad idea. But when he joined the Roger Stone Show earlier in the week, Richard Brezak disagreed with that. Why is McCarthy wrong, and why are you and the president right, Richard?
Well, because the problem is real. There is like an overload, an overdose of criminality, violent criminality going on in Chicago. McCarthy came from New York via Newark. He got in trouble as a command officer in New York. He got in trouble with sexual harassment lawsuits and some other civil rights matters in Newark. And Chicago thought he would be a great fit because I think he's got that Democrat attitude that, what's in it for me? He was the superintendent, by the way, that was in charge of the department when the biggest cover-up of anything that ever happened in Chicago, the Laquan McDonald shooting, took place. And that's when they unwittingly had a video of a police officer firing and killing Laquan McDonald 16 times, 16 hits, while about 15 to 20 officers never even had their guns off. They were there first. This was one of the last people to arrive. So what they did, McCarthy saw the video the next morning, and they covered it up. Rahm Emanuel paid the family $5 million as hush money. No lawsuit was filed. They refused to release the video until the judge ordered it so. And then a day before the video was actually released, they indicted the officer who did the shooting. So that's for McCarthy. There's nobody nobody in the command level, including McCarthy, took responsibility for not what actually happened out on the street, but for making sure that there was a quick, expeditious, fair, objective, honest investigation of the shooting of Laquan McDonald, and there wasn't. They tried to cover it up. And this is what they're doing now. They don't want the president to come in with any kind of resources because they're afraid that, one, the president is going to find what he already knows exists, and that's the neoplasm, the cancer of corruption that has existed in the Cook County Democrat Central Party and existed in Chicago for all of these years. It goes back even to the 1800s when Chicago was very embracing to anarchists. But it continues on today in modern Chicago. And then the people, elect, people like Johnson or people before him like Lightfoot or Rahm Emanuel, or even before that, Richie Daley. That's the second guy, who got in there because of his father's name. But he actually was the one that ruined the department because he despises the police. That was the attitude. He takes care of his political cronies. They abolished the rank of captain, and then he reinstated it as an appointed rank so he could make all of his cronies captains. And then they went on to call merit promotions. You can ask any police officer in Chicago, stop him on the street and ask him what he thinks of merit promotions. It's a euphemism for political clout. It's a euphemism for what they call in New York a rabbi. It's another euphemism for what they call in Chicago a Chinaman. That means you've got a political sponsor, and that's how you get promoted. People go from police officer to a high-ranking position and cannot pass a test, so they just promote them anyway because of merit. But there's no objective measure of merit either, which there can't be. See, the problem is with exams, they're discriminatory. That's why we had affirmative action nonsense a generation ago. I testified that, all exams are discriminatory. They discriminate between those who know the answers and those who don't know the answers. Discrimination is the raison d'etre of exams. You separate the people who know versus who don't know. Bar exams, medical licensing exams, real estate exams, first grade exams. There's your answer. Who has the correct answers and who doesn't? So this is all nothing more than a cover-up because they don't want the exposure. A lot of people forgot there's a collateral story. The Justice Department asked Pritzker, the governor who removed the toilets from his mansion and had his house reappraised so he can get a break, on his real estate taxes. Yeah, I think it was about $300 and some $1,000. Nobody went to jail for that, but he did get caught, and they put the money back. It's like committing bank robbery, and you get arrested usually by the local police, and the FBI comes in and steals the arrest from you. But they arrest the bank robber and say, okay, since you still have the money, give it back to the bank and we'll let you go. That's what Pritzker did with his reassessment of his mansion by trying to falsify its worth by taking out the toilets. Here's a billionaire, really a great man of integrity, but he's looking at 2028. He wants to be president. And God forbid if his grandfather, A.N. Pritzker, who I knew personally was a wonderful, wonderful man, saw what his grandson is doing, I think he'd step on him like a fly and rub him out because he's an embarrassment to the grandfather and all the other ancestral Pritzkers who worked hard to develop, their family net worth and the Hyatt Regency campaign. So this is what Pritzker's looking at is 2028, the next presidential election, because he has delusions of grandeur, just like Newsom out in California and other people that think they're going to come in and ride on what they perceive to be the adverse reaction, the coattails of the adverse reaction toward President Trump. The unfortunate thing is nobody in the Democrat Party, including Pritzker including Brandon Johnson with his desperate speeches, are going to best or outdo or outclass President Trump's actions. President Trump says something, and he does it. People agree with him. People disagree with him. The people who disagree with him find out later that he was right. So far, he's been right, and he wants to come in. And this is not without precedent. Daley and the governor of Illinois at the time brought in the National Guard for the 1968 Democrat Convention. They brought him in on the front end for a prophylactic preventive manpower display. They also brought in the National Guard, and then they brought in regular Army troops from President Johnson in April of 68, 4 months before the convention, when the King riots were taking place. And I remember being on the street at that time alongside soldiers who were coming back for R&R from Vietnam, from Fort Hood, Texas, and Fort Carson, Colorado. And these kids were not very happy. And I call them kids, even though I was only a year or two older than they at the time. But what I'm saying is, this is not without precedent. Somehow Muriel Bowser in Washington, saw the light, and she is now basking in the sun of what's happening in Washington, all because she went along with President Trump's idea, let's give it a try. When you talk about crime, the last place my wife and I lived in Chicago was a neighborhood right north of downtown called River North. It was the hottest area at the time. There was a rap party going on, a rap performer party going on in a restaurant close enough I could toss a baseball to that restaurant from where we used to live. And there were 4 people shot and murdered, and I think it was in the teens, the exact number who were wounded. And I don't think the case is solved yet. That's well over a month ago. But the thing is that they look the other way. I mean, who wants to walk around among the River North art galleries or the fine restaurants there that are closing down because nobody's going there? The thing is that Democrats don't understand economics. They understand how to steal because they've been doing that all their lives in Cook County and in Washington, but they know how to steal. But they don't care about economics. I mean, when they had the riots after that pseudo-hero, the drug dealer, George Floyd, they were rioting on the Magnificent Mile, rioting. And you know what happened? Mayor, what's her name, Lightfoot, okay? She said, let them go because those places have insurance. Well, who pays the insurance? Do you pay the insurance, Mayor? No, they pay out of their own pockets. They pay out of their sales, out of their commercial transactions. And if that's the way you look at it, she's dumb to begin with, but, that's simple economics. Yeah, By the way, I want you to know she belongs at Harvard because Harvard's full of plagiarizers, and plagiarizers are liars. And she is the only attorney I know. She may be the first black or woman of color attorney who, in a written opinion by the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals, accused her of lying. Okay, so if she had the gall or the temerity to lie to the Seventh Circuit, the people out there in Chicago are fodder for her lying. And it's the same thing with this guy, Brandon Johnson. What he says is ridiculous. The best thing that he could do in terms of swaying the people of Chicago is stand up there and be the poster boy for the decades of failure for the Chicago public school system.
All right, we're going to have to take a quick break here. We're going to have to take a quick break here. I agree with you about one thing. J.B. Pritzker needs to run. Not for president. He just needs to run. We'll be right back.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Roger Stone Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome. We're back on the Roger Stone Show. My guest today, Richard Brezek, the former superintendent of police for the city of Chicago, serving in that position from 1980 to 1983 under one of the last great Democrat mayors of Chicago, my good friend, Mayor Jane Byrne. We're honored to have him. Richard, the Chicago Police Department is currently short 1,600 police officers. These are jobs that evidently no one will apply for. What is the reason for this?
Well, the reason for it is who would want to be a police officer in Chicago when the administration over in City Hall hates the police? They have placed so many restrictions, so many bars, so many impediments that, if I were a police officer there today, I would answer the radio and then go home, at the end of the tour of duty. I wouldn't do any real police work, which is not really done answering radio calls. It's proactive police work. But they don't want that done. They've got a consent decree there. It's being overseen by a federal judge. Tell me what federal judge knows anything about running a police department, but he's going to make the calls. We've had several police officers in the last few years in Chicago shot and killed with their guns in their holsters because they have a rule, and I think maybe a law now in Illinois, because, the General Assembly in Springfield, that's kind of like the Glee Club for the state mental hospital. But they have a law down there now where a police officer, if he draws his gun out of the holster, he's got to make a report because that is an act of the use of deadly force. Are you serious? That's why people are being killed, men and women. Ella French was one that I can think of off the top of my head. She died with her gun in a holster because they stopped the car, approached it, and she got shot and killed. Now, she didn't draw the gun because who wants to keep writing reports? When I was over in Fillmore as a young police officer in 64 and 65, we get maybe 8-9 calls a night. It was busy. And when you're going into a place like shots fired or woman screaming for help or man with a gun, when we got out of the car, the guns came out of the holster. We carried them by the side of our thigh. We weren't pointing them at anyone, but we were eliminating the wasted time of unsnapping the holster and drawing the weapon. If someone pointed a gun at us, we had the gun out. You just raise it, and that was it. But they got these rules that people who are making these rules are making these decisions in courts to monitor all this stuff. They've never been on the streets of Chicago. They don't know what goes on out there. They don't know what it's like to have bullets whizzing past your head. They had a couple of years ago, they had a great FBI agent, and I use that facetiously, from Philadelphia come in as a carpetbagger superintendent. He went out to the south side, an intersection where there was a shooting the night before, and during the press conference, it's a political stunt, more gunfire took place. All the officers in the blue shirts, they ran toward the gunfire. He turned, jumped in his car, and went back downtown. They nicknamed him Jay Fed when he came. They changed it to Jay Fled after the incident. That's the kind of people. What do people think that FBI agents know how to run police departments? They're investigators. They're not police officers. So all of these Band-Aid approaches don't work. The guy who had the answer is now dead. That was Professor James Q. Wilson when he and George Kelling wrote the article in Atlantic Magazine 40-some years ago, Broken Windows. That's the way you approach it, aggressive preventive patrol. That was the motto of O.W. Wilson, who was the big guru in law enforcement back in the 60s.
Those are, of course, the policies that Rudy Giuliani brought in New York, restoring New York to be one of the safest cities in the country. And every law enforcement professional that I respect says the broken windows policy is the way to go. It's too bad Chicago doesn't do it. I want to thank our guest, Richard Brezek, the former superintendent of the Chicago Police. And for all of you who are listening to the Roger Stone Show every Sunday, God bless you and Godspeed.
Thanks for listening to The Roger Stone Show. You can hear The Roger Stone Show Sunday afternoons at 3. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?